Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, so everybody take their seats. I know you all are just so excited to be brand new test coordinators, and this is what you strive to be when you started out down the education path, right? How many of you said, I want to be a test coordinator? None of you, really? Oh my gosh. That just shocks me. No, it doesn't. We're here today to we started this last year because I'm going to be real honest with you. Test coordinating is a hard job. It is. But we are here to help you understand what's going to be expected of you and hopefully give you lots of tips to help you get through this process throughout the year. Barrington and I are here for you, and we've been at this a long time. This is my 28th year in assessment in Orange County Public Schools, and Barrington's been at it for 7 or 8 years. He came from one of the biggest high schools here in the district and to join me here in assessment. So you've got a lot of expertise at your fingertips, and we really mean that. So sit back. We're not going to bury you in information, but hopefully give you a very good overview about what's going to be expected. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my boss, Dr. Frank Gilbert. He is we are all part of Research Accountability and Grants. That is our overview. So if you see the word RAG, it doesn't mean you're going to pick it up and mop your countertop with it. That is Research Accountability and Grants. And in that is housed test development and measurement. And we'll give you some more because I want you to be familiar with the acronyms and how to maneuver through so you know who you're dealing with. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Frank Gilbert, who is my boss, and he is the Director of Test Development and Measurement.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting day of testing in Orange County Public Schools. Cindy mentioned that you all may not have had this directly in your career path when you began. And when I was teaching graduate courses in test and measurement, I'd always ask, how many of you went into education so you could write really good tests? And I got the same number of hands that I'm getting right now. Well, I am one of those odd ducks who actually went to school, and my PhD is in test and measurement. And that's actually where I find a great deal of value and purpose, because testing itself has a great and noble history going back to 620 AD in China, when the first standardized test was created to populate the civil service with people who could actually do the job as opposed to somebody's brother-in-law, you know. And learning is a function of feedback. We learn by practicing something and then getting feedback on it. And the testing gives us that feedback. Quality testing gives us good feedback. Did you all have the experience that I did after I left high school and I went to college, and I had this sort of startling realization I was not nearly as smart as I had thought I was in the smaller pool that I was coming from? Did anybody else have that experience? Okay. Yeah, okay, that's not unusual. And then you go to graduate school and you run into those scary smart people and that sort of thing. So, but that is a part of the feedback that we now offer students on a regular basis. We give them that kind of contextual feedback by giving them national comparisons and saying, this is how you're doing compared to the big pool that is out there that you're swimming in or will be swimming in. So we try to answer the questions, how are we doing? And we do that by comparing ourselves to ourselves in growth measures. We compare it to within our school, we compare school to school, we compare school to the state, we compare state to state, and we're even involved in international testing with things like PISA that some of you will get to participate in. So far, the NASA has not been able to develop intergalactic testing, but we keep, should it happen, I'm sure you will be responsible for it. So if you went to the grocery store and you picked up a little book that was a practice test book for mathematics, or a bookstore, wherever you might find one of those little practice books, what would be the difference between that test and something like SAT or FSA? Would there be any difference in the question? The questions would be largely the same. The difference between a standardized test like FSA or SAT or Flickrs or any of the tests that we do, the difference is the directions. And the directions allow us to have a standardized administration, and by doing that, we can compare the results. The results are meaningful if we all follow the same directions, if we all know that you do that. And that's a big chunk of your responsibility, is to maintain that consistency and fairness so that it's a level playing field for all the students and we have meaningful results when we're finished. Now, you will be fighting a number of forces. Chaos is one of them, is the entropy, the natural tendency of matter and energy to become disorganized. So you will be trying to create organization and structure and meaning and purpose out of chaos. And you may even come across people with ulterior motives who would just like higher numbers. They don't really want good feedback. It's like when I worked with the morbidly obese people and they would say, yeah, I have a mirror in my house, it's about this big. They didn't want a very clear picture of what they were doing. So you have at your disposal some of the finest support that's available in the state. When the state wants to know, hey, how's this FSA going? They have Cindy and Barrington go up to Florida and say, hey, this is what's working and this isn't. And when the Florida Association of Test Administrators have an issue, they say, hey, Cindy, hey, Barrington, how do you guys do this? So please take advantage and know that what you have is as good as there is anywhere. They are very capable, and as you already know, if you don't already know, they're extremely personable, and they are almost pathologically forgiving. You will very seldom get chided. They would much rather have a question than a mistake later. So please feel free, feel comfortable, and take advantage of these very nice people that you have to work with. Thank you very much for all the work that you're about to do. It's going to be a great adventure, and I appreciate that. And all the people who depend on the quality information that comes out of all of these assessments depend on what you are going to be doing. And thank you for your work.
Thank you, Frank. Okay. And with that, we are going to jump in. So again, don't feel like this is going to give you everything. This is part one. We also have an SML coming up. There's also specific trainings about specific tests coming up, and we'll go through the training calendar. But this is just kind of step one, to give you a real good overview of acronyms, what tests we deal with, how we operate, and what's going to be expected of you. That's what we really wanted to focus on today, so that you kind of get some tips about, okay, now that I've got this job, what do I need to start working on first? Okay, so here's who we are. Under that banner, we have RAG, and then we have Test Development and Measurement. On the one side, Test Development, Casey Libersat and Michelle Paul. How many of you participated in any of the test development for the CFEs? Okay, a couple of you, not many. The CFEs were actually developed here in Orange County by Orange County teachers. We have one of the best test development teams in anywhere. They do a phenomenal job. They worked all summer to update the CFEs and to create the new MPAs, and we'll talk about those later. And then on the other side, we have student assessment, which consists of myself, Cindy Landers, and Barrington Maxwell on that. So you sometimes hear me called the queen, the witch, lots of different things. Just kidding. Basically, I've just been at this for so long. If you've been doing it as long as I have, you sort of get an institutional feel about who I am. I support the learning communities of East, Southeast, and STO. Also, the alternative education sites and high schools A through K. The reason we did this was, for the longest time, I did this by myself. And when Barrington came on, we found that everybody was calling up, and that is the biggest way we communicate is either through email or on the phone. And especially during the main testing times during FSA, we each field several hundred emails, and we were getting several hundred phone calls a day. And so to try to make it so that you could get to us faster, we've split up the district so that you have a direct line to me, and another group has a direct line to Barrington. So never feel like you cannot call the other person, but we're hoping that if you mostly call me, if you're in those areas, that it will facilitate us returning your call faster. That is one of our main purposes in life, is to make sure you get the answers. Our job is to make sure you have the answers so that testing goes well and there aren't any big mistakes. Okay, and then the other side of that is Barrington Maxwell. You might refer to him. I call him Bear just because it's a lot easier than Barrington. If you've known him before he came to the district, at Dr. Phillips High School, he was very fondly known as BMAX. And so, but you can call him Barrington, Bear, BMAX, Maxwell. I've heard everything. He supports the learning communities of North, Southwest, and West. Also the charters and CTE sites in the high schools L through Z. Okay, so just kind of get that in your which one. But if I'm not available, we very rarely are both out at the same time. And if you have a critical question, you absolutely just try to get the other person. Okay, it's not a big deal. It's not like I'm going to say, no, you're Barrington's person, call him. That's never going to happen. And as I said, or as Frank said, we do not believe there's any such thing as a stupid question. So never say, oh God, I don't want to call them about this. We will never make you feel stupid, or that you should have known that, or why didn't you read your manual? Our job is to help you do it. So never feel like you can't give us a call to ask the question or say I've got a problem or I did it wrong. My job is to help us fix it. And there's very few issues we can't fix, because you realize that with state assessment comes ramifications if something goes wrong. School grades can get messed up. And that goes down to even the shipping of things can affect school grades. If something gets shipped off to the wrong place, it's going to affect your school grade because it's not going to get scored and it's not going to go into the process. So anytime you deal with a huge mechanism like this, which testing is, or system, there are ramifications, and you've really got to know where all the pieces are and how they connect, and that's what we're going to do today. But never, 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 we are here at your disposal, and we truly mean that. So never feel like you can't give us a call. And the third person on our team is Jeanette Figueroa. Jeanette, raise your hand back there. That's Jeanette. We're still kind of working out. We lost one of our positions last year. Some of you may know Mary Navarro. She was cut from our department, not her, but the job. And so we are down a person, and we're still trying to figure out exactly how we're all going to do it. What they used to do is things like the materials or if you needed help with an account. So we're not quite sure how that's going to work out, but we will let you know very shortly once we figure out who you're going to call for those sorts of things that they used to do. Okay, so what exactly do? We communicate all the information about all the different tests. We mostly do that through training, but then we also do that with various other methods. But any aspect of district, state, national test administration, Barrington and I do it. The other thing is enforce the state statute and the test security state rules. This is the part we hate the most. We kind of feel like the testing police, but it's our job. And that's the piece that we try to make sure that you understand, so that, because that's the piece that can get you into the most trouble and get your teachers into the most trouble. So we do focus on that quite a bit. We create training for all district and state mandated tests. This is the first round. Most of them we will give through SML because we hate to have to pull you off your sites. We know that's a big problem, and in Orlando, that can be almost an hour on the road each way or more. And so to facilitate getting you doing what you need to be doing, and we also understand testing is not the only thing you do. How many of you all are just a test coordinator and nothing else? Yeah, none of you. We do understand that. So please, we're going to try to keep you the testing so that you can get that done, because we know that principal's asking you for a report and their teachers are asking you for resources, and I do understand that. You guys are some of the hardest working people. I'm assuming most of you are probably CRTs, learning specialists. You've got other jobs, okay? But we create the training for you. We support. Basically, that's a big part of what we do. We give you website resources. They're mostly created here in the office. We also phone and email. That is what Barrington and I do during the administrations. We pretty much are tied to our desks, answering the phone, because that's our job, is to help you get through this. And we facilitate the reporting of the student, school, and district test results. We do all the logistics of getting the paper reports out to you. We also post them out onto the websites and help you locate things that have gone missing and that sort of thing. Okay, the tests we manage. Here's the big one. For all schools, we do FSA, ELA math, grades 3 through 10, the statewide science assessment, grades 5 and 8, the FSAA, which is the alternate assessment, which is only students who are on access points. iReady, one of the new ones in elementary and middle school. This is sort of taking the place of MAP, which we used to do at the elementary. We didn't have anything at the middle school. It also sort of replaces the benchmark to give us. We're going to do that 3 times a year. There will be training for that. We also do the access for Ls and the alternate access for Ls for the LY students. The CFEs, the common final exams at the mid-year and also the end of the year in grades 5 through 12. And all national and international exams. Some of you may be picked to do those. We already have the list for NAEP this year. That's a national assessment. You don't get any individual results from that, but it is, the country actually puts that out. You probably have seen some of those reports. We also have PEARLS, which is reading literacy study. It's an international study. We had 1 school participate in that last year. And the TIMS, which is the International Math and Science Study. So you may be picked for those. Again, none of those, if you're picked, you must participate. It's actually written into state law that we participate in those if chosen. And as soon as we know that, we will let you know. Okay. The other tests we have for elementary schools only, we have Flickers, which is the Florida Kindergarten Readiness Screener. There's training coming up for that next Tuesday. And for the secondary schools, we also have the FSA EOCs in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, the NGSSS EOCs in Civics, Biology, and U.S. History, PERT, which is the Concordant test for Algebra 1 if kids have not passed that. And then we also coordinate the PSAT SAT school day. I'm tired. Can I go home now? Okay. We are a one-stop shop. We want you to, when you get back to your office, what I would do is go ahead and set up a link to this site. This is the Office of Research Accountability and Grants. This is our website. We put everything out here. Beyond that, if you look over at the side, and I can barely read that, that is the test development and measurement. And if you click on that, here's where you get to our site. This is the student assessment site. I would go ahead and just do the hyperlink on this one because you can always back into the other one. The other way to go into this is through ims.ocps.net, and then you can just work your way down. If you go to RAG, and then you can go test development and measurement. But I just would hyperlink this, and that way you can click it and be on the site. Out here, we have elementary school assessments, and then middle and high. And all the assessments are listed there. So if you're working on Flickrs, you're going to click on the Flickrs buttons, and all the resources that we have available at that time are going to be there. And the same holds true for middle and high school. Down the right-hand side, you see that we have the testing calendars up there. We have resources. We have the training information. The training calendar is up there. And then you also have our contact information there. So everything is right out on this page. So what does? This is the FSA and GSSS page. And you see that if there's something big and new coming up, you'll see that at the top. If there are deadlines looming, there will be a banner at the top. Right now, we're looking at the deadline for the test score inquiry form, or the inquiry process, which is where if you are missing a score from last spring, you can fill out an inquiry, and we will send it up to the state to see if they can locate that missing score. But that's part of that process. So anytime there's a deadline looming, you'll see that in those banners at the top. Okay? Then down here, you will see that you've got, what does that say?
It's the GPO account.
Oh, those are the GPO accounts. Sorry, we've got this really little on the screen. Okay, so those are the GPO accounts. The GPO accounts are what you need, your kids need to sign into each of the tests. So that's one thing that once you really get into this, you'll want. So a lot of those things that you need to see right away are up at the top. Okay, we also have on there the actual schedule or calendar for that specific test. Okay, you will see the master calendar out on that right-hand side that we saw before. But for this particular test, those are the testing days that you need to be aware of. Okay, down here we have the training materials. Everything we do, we record. We are recording this training. We will record all of the SML trainings, and then we post them up here. So if there is an issue that you can't get to one, you are required to attend every training we have. But if there is for some reason you can't, you just need to let us know beforehand, and then, excuse me, choked up. You need to let us know beforehand, and then once you have watched the training after the fact, you need to let us know, yes, I have watched the training, and we will document that. Okay, because if you don't go to training and there is any kind of an issue, you're going to have a problem. It's one of those things that's required by the state. Okay, but all of them are there. The other thing, we constantly have test coordinators that say, I went back and watched that 2 or 3 times, because we do cover a lot of information in these trainings. The PowerPoint and the recording will always be up there under the training and materials. Okay, parent communication. We also have the parent letters that you need to send out. They will always be up sort of at the top because that's one of those first things that you'll be doing every time we hit an administration window. Okay, that's enough about us. What's a testing coordinator? What exactly is that? So we're just going to do this toe dip into the swimming pool of testing. Barrington has a way with words, okay? We're just going to kind of try to give you an overall view and how to deal with that. So the definition of the testing coordinator. The person who manages plans, facilitates all standardized testing in their assigned work location. An expert in multitasking, collaboration, and convincing others to do things they really don't want to do. And honestly, that's the biggest part of the job, right there. And then we always have, love that, other duties as assigned, okay? One of the things that I was so glad I got to do the first part of this because this came also from Barrington, which not surprising, that has to do with honey. But he always says it's better to you make more headway catching flies with honey than you do with trying to be, you know, the big mean bad old bear. Okay, it's absolutely true. There are some people you're going to need. We're going to talk about that in a minute. That to help you do this job, you cannot do it alone. You're going to need your ELL staffing coordinator, your ELL coordinator, your TSR. You need the help of your principal. You need those kind of partners to get this done. And you can't walk up to them and say, I have to do this, you're going to have to help me. You bring them cookies. You know, you kind of butter them up. And it really does work. If you try to get them on your team the good way, it'll really help you facilitate your job. Okay, so you're going to have to be a leader, okay, if you're not naturally one of those, because you are the person. As far as I'm concerned, I may be the queen of testing in Orange County. I like to think of the world, but if I'm queen, you are the gods of testing at your school. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, you all are the end-all be-all of testing at your school. If you say this, then that's the way it is. Okay? You will never have a time when you say this is the way it should be because Cindy said this is the way we need to do it, and then one of your teachers or another person in your school coming to say, but I don't want to do it that way, and I'm going to tell them, she said you had to do it that way, that's the way you have to do it. Because you need that clout to be able to manage this, because you're going to be asking a lot of people to do stuff that they really don't want to do. Okay? So you need to be that leader. You play an integral part in the school improvement plan, which I'm sure your principal's probably already mentioned a dozen times. The school's expert and supervisor on all things testing. You have to have good organizational skills. Now, that doesn't come to me naturally. I had to learn it, and now I do consider myself an expert in logistics and organizing. Bear comes by it very naturally, okay? But you can learn it. It is a learned skill, and we're going to try to give you tips to overcome if that's not your nature. You also need to collaborate and delegate. That is important. Okay, setting up your office. How many of you all have an individual office now as test coordinator? Okay, looks like almost all of you do. Okay, you want to set up the vault, and we aren't kidding about setting up the vault. It's all about location. The perfect testing office should be centrally located in your school. You do not want it in the nether reaches, in the forest, portable that nobody else wanted, because everybody is going to have to be going there at some point to pick up things, to counsel with you, to, do whatever. Ideally, you need to be centrally located. The other thing, especially as we go into those tests which are still paper-based, that you need to have the delivery, okay? You need things have to get to your office and get locked up as soon as they show up at your school. So make sure that if you aren't there already, maybe talk to your principal about, is there in any way? And we'll give you some more kind of help with that. As we go forward, you'll see that it is critical. Only 3 people, no more than 3 people, can have access to your office, and this includes the custodial staff. So if you've been given an office that you know there are 20 people on your campus that have access to it, you need to get on that now, because I guarantee you, come testing time, the facilities office hates getting those phone calls, and then we have to call and say, it's state rule that only 3 people can have it. And trust me, you'll see it in the documents that you'll sign as the test security agreement and things like that. That is exactly what the rule is. So make sure that if that's an issue now, that you go ahead and handle it and try to get that rekeyed or get a new lock for it or move into a room that is better. Okay. This is actually Barrington's old office at Dr. Phillips. Now, it was pretty massive, but that was also a high school, and he got that office when we were doing lots of paper testing. At an elementary school, if you got an office this big, I want to change jobs with you, okay? But you do need to have space because there is paper for the testing. There's lots of stuff for you to do. You need to spread out because you're going to have schedules, things like that. So you're going to have space to store boxes, pencils, calculators, dictionaries, reams of paper, tissue boxes. Trust me, you'll need lots of these. You will cry at least once this year. And if you need a shoulder, Bear and I have we have big shoulders. I can't tell you the number of times the test coordinator has just called me sobbing because it's just been a really bad day and everybody is on her case and everybody was just not happy with what she was doing. We've been there. We know about it. So never face it. I will never talk to you again about it if it was you. You know, it's just one of those things. We do understand. So never hesitate to pick us up. Or if you need to call and just let loose. You can't say any cuss words that I don't say on a regular basis. There isn't any. But just be aware that, that is one of the things that we do. Tables as workspace, a comfortable chair with adjustable heights. I wish I could tell you that you can do this in 7.5 hours a day. During this time of year, you absolutely can. But when it comes down to the testing week, it's probably going to be a lot more. So you need to be comfortable where you are. Barrington even had a little refrigerator in there for snacks because, trust me, at a high school, this guy was there from early in the morning until late at night when it was in the middle of testing because he was doing FSA and AP testing and all those other things. So unfortunately, that does kind of come with the job. It is cyclical, so it's not all the time. But we do understand that. Okay, so the testing office, you're going to need a desk, and we suggest a dry erase calendar. If you've ever been up in our offices, I have actually 8 months of calendar up on the wall with all of the testing windows located on it. We put training dates up there. We put that. So all I have to do is look. And we've even got my bosses come up and say, okay, what's going on this day? A lot of people walk in to look at it. So you could put things that are going on in your school. So if somebody comes up and says, can I have a field trip? And you say, nope, that's right in the middle of the FSA window. That's not a good idea. You need to look at another day. It's just a really good visual. It's always there. And it really does help. Consider a desktop paper cutter. We use test tickets when it comes to online testing. and you do need to cut those apart. So just one of those big slicer dicers, or you could get the smaller ones. They're only like $20 but if you can get one of those big ones with the guillotine, cut, that slices it, trust me, that really does help, and you don't have to go, and those suckers are heavy, so you don't have to go lugging them around. So see if your secretary, I'm betting you might be able to find some in surplus. So get your registrar or your secretary or whoever does the ordering to try to get you one of those, because for online testing, you do need that. If possible, request dual computer monitors. That really does help when you are working on the platforms. When you have, and we'll talk about platforms in a bit, and we'll definitely get into big training with that. But it really does help when you've got lists of kids and you're scheduling and you're trying to print tickets and that stuff. The dual monitor really does help. I can't tell them that you have to have it, but if you have your principal and you don't have it and you request it and they want to know why, if they'd like to call us, we'll give them the why we think you need to have it. Okay? But they really do help when you're managing those. I think it's pretty standard, but I'm not sure out at the schools. So if you have a problem with it, just give us a call, and we'll try to push that through for you. And it just really, what I do is, on mine, I keep my email open all day, and especially during Windows, it's very important that you keep up on your emails while we're talking about that, because email is the way we communicate. We've got over 250 sites. There's no way for us to make phone calls and say, we have this problem today. And if you don't keep your email free, it shouldn't be a problem now, but if you know that your email is down and you're worried about missing something, give us a call and say, my email was down. Did you send anything out in the last 24 hours? But always keep that email up, especially during testing windows, because that's how we'll communicate with you. And then I just found on the Windows, how many of you all are on Windows 10? Okay, a few of you. There's a really cool thing, and I just found it the other day. It's called Sticky Notes. And you can actually click on it, and it puts a sticky note up on your screen. And that's what I do with my list for today. So if you haven't found that, go ahead and try that. And I think it's great. It just always stays up on your screen. Okay? It makes comparing two spreadsheets much easier. And we'll talk about that piece in a little bit, about trying to figure out who it is you need to test and how we determine that. Okay, your testing office. Treat it as if it's Fort Knox. When you have testing materials in there, that's the kind of security it's supposed to have. Students should not be permitted to enter your office while there's secure materials in there. You must keep your door locked at all times when you have secure testing materials. And what I would say is go ahead and get into the process now of when you leave, lock your office, because if you don't, what's going to happen is when you do have materials in there, you'll forget. And then you'll walk out and leave it open. And then if something becomes missing, that's going to be a problem. Again, a lot of these things are to keep you out of trouble if something happens. If nothing happens, everything is good. But trust me, at some point, something will happen. Okay? Avoid permitting teachers to congregate in your office, especially when you're storing secure materials in there. Again, this is a secure area and should be treated as such. Okay, pop quiz. Access to the testing office should be equivalent security to which of the following locations? The airport, the courthouse, the vault at a bank, or the principal's office? What is that? C. Yay! You got it right. Absolutely. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn this over to the bear, and he's going to take you through the rest of it.
All right, good morning, everyone. Raise this up just a little bit. All right, so I want to talk about test security documents. A lot of times you see these documents in the back of your testing manuals, but no one ever really specifically explains to you why they're in there and why they need to be used. Or if you're new to testing, you probably don't even know what I'm talking about, and you've just seen them in your testing bins, and your testing coordinator previously has said, go ahead and fill these out. And you're not even sure if you filled them out correctly. There are lots of documents that have to be maintained for testing. I've been here, 3 years now in the district office, and each year we've had different investigations related to testing for different sites. So we have to compile these documents. We do have a system in place for our district, and a few other districts are using this similar process in their districts as well, where we allow you to upload the security documents. In your manuals, normally it says that you need to create a district assessment coordinator only box. And it's this box where you'd put all your seating charts, your security logs, your test administrator, prohibited activities agreements, that kind of thing. And then, of course, if there was an investigation, Cindy or I would have to drive out to the warehouse, which doesn't have any air conditioning, I should add. And then we'd have to climb through all the boxes to find the one box for the school that the state's deciding to investigate. Luckily now, with this system, you upload the documents online. If I need them, if I need to see who was sitting next to Jessica, I can pull it up as long as I know what day Jessica was testing because you've uploaded your documents. This particular guide basically tells you how that system works, how to get your materials uploaded, and you can find it on the IMS page for TDM. All right. So it replaces the DACO boxes I mentioned before. Also, it makes it an easy way for you to keep track of your documents so that when you need to find them, you have them available to you. We also, in the document, which I'll show you in just a little bit, we also tell you how to organize documents at your school so that when you need them, you're able to locate them. We let you know what you can keep and what you can get rid of, how long to keep it, and all that good stuff. So in the guide, there are 3 main methods for getting your documents scanned and uploaded. The most common and easiest one is scanning to the USB drive. And basically, what you would do, most schools have the black Kyocera copiers, and in the keypad, there's a slot where you can insert a USB drive. You can scan your documents, and we have step-by-step directions on how to have those documents scanned and end up on your USB drive. You can also scan them using the copier as well so that it's sent to your email. This was a method that some schools, especially the elementary schools, seem to like, so we have it available. And then if you're at a site that does not have a big Kyocera copier, you can scan your documents using a regular scanner or one of those all-in-one type printers, and then it'll scan to your computer. There are also directions for encrypting the documents that you scan. So you want to make sure that as you're reading through the guide and getting your copier or computer set up, you want to make sure that you are encrypting those documents. And we do that to keep them safe so that others who should not have access to these documents aren't able to access them. Once you have scanned your documents, they go and get uploaded to what we call the upload site. And this is just a preview of what that site looks like. Basically, you will indicate which test administration you're scanning documents for, the date, the school year, all that good stuff. And then I maintain a database library where all this information is scanned. Now, one thing about this database is that once you send something, you have no way of going back and seeing what was sent in terms of the actual files. However, one change we've made for this year is once you've scanned and uploaded your documents, you will get an email that has a screenshot of the form so you can see what you filled out and the files that were uploaded. All right. Keep in mind, a lot of times there are testing windows that happen back to back. These documents do have to be uploaded by a week after that window has closed. So try not to let it pile up on you because you'll notice that you have lots of documents that you have to keep track of and scan. And the more you pile it on, the more time it's going to take to get everything scanned. All right?
And just so you know, know, this is not just a paperwork exercise because it's in some law. We do go back and pull them. I have a stack like this that I needed to pull for the state. And if I was not able to access that stuff, you guys would have a problem. Okay, if you hadn't uploaded your documents, I would be on the phone with your principal saying, I don't have the documents from last year. They were never uploaded. And then especially if there's a change in process, then it becomes really hard to try to retrieve those. So it's not just an exercise in paperwork. Please do treat this as an absolute requirement because we do every year, we go back into at least several schools' documentation to pull some stuff for one reason or another, and it's critical that it be there. And if it's not there, it's one of those things. Again, if nothing ever pops up and you didn't do it, nobody would ever know. But if something happens and it's not there, there's going to be a problem, okay?
All right, so as I mentioned before, in this guide, we tell you which documents need to be kept, what can be recycled, how long it can be stored. Now, of course, this is kind of small for you to see, but in that TDM upload guide that's on our IMS page, on page 8, this will tell you which documents need to be kept, how long to keep them, how to keep them organized. Especially if you're new and you're coming in and maybe the testing coordinator from last year left, I don't want to say a mess, but left documents that you're not sure what to do with. If you look at this page, it'll tell you if you need to keep those, or if you can get them shredded, or if you need to recycle them. All right? All right, so now let's talk about these forms. The forms that I'm going to address today are the administration record/security checklist, the security log, chain of custody form, seating charts, test administrator prohibited activities agreement, and the test administration and security agreement. All right, so the first one is the administration record/security checklist. Now, the purpose of this form doesn't really go with the name, but this is the name the state gives to it, so that's the name we will use. Largely, this document is used for paper-based testing. Largely, your not Access for L's, because they have a similar form to this, but this particular form is mostly used for like your third graders if you're at an elementary school, and then you'll have a similar form for this for science, 5th grade, and science, 8th grade, because those assessments are still paper-based. Each student is given a test booklet, and each booklet has a security number. This is the form that you use to document which test booklet was assigned to each specific student. This is one way for your test administrators to keep track of the test booklets that were assigned to them, and also which test booklet to give to your students. Some schools have this form pre-filled before they give it to the test administrator. If you're one of those anal retentive people like myself, you probably will do that. We do make available electronic versions of this so that if you have the handheld scanners, you can scan the barcode on the book and the number will be placed in this document. So you'll see on our IMS page that that document will be available for you. The other thing is you track attendance on here. So of course, if you're doing paper-based testing, a student was absent, this is what you'd use to maintain that. All right, so just keep that in mind. I generally, just for my own, peace of mind, I generally recommend that you don't have the test administrators fill this out. A, because it takes quite a bit of time on the back end to fill out, and also you want to make sure that it's done accurately. There are times when you will need to do, like for example, for the score inquiries, if it's a paper-based test, you'll need to go back and be able to tell us which booklet the student had so I can report it to the state, and this is the document you'll have to refer to. So if it's accurate, then you'll know that it's right, and you'll be able to give me the information that's needed. One additional thing before I move on, some schools, especially the high schools, tend to use this form kind of as an attendance roster for the computer-based testing. If you choose to do so, that is perfectly fine, and you'll just fill it out for those purposes as needed. All right, the next one is the security log. This is probably the form that is filled out incomplete most often, and it's the one that the state is most interested in being completed correctly. The security log basically tracks each person who comes and goes from a testing room while testing is going on, all right? You can use it for multiple days because there are lines where you can add multiple dates. That is fine. However, a lot of times what tends to happen is your test administrators will partially fill it out. They'll forget to sign it. They'll forget to put the date. They'll forget to put what test it was for, that kind of thing. If you want to pre-fill it for them, you can, or you want to make sure that as you're collecting test materials, you want to verify that they have filled it out correctly before you accept it from them. If you are going into a testing room, even if you're not going in to take over testing, you want to make sure that you also sign the security log. There was an issue some years back with the TSRs saying that they aren't responsible for testing, so if they're going in to fix a computer and they shouldn't have to sign it, if they're walking into the room, they need to sign it. All right. This doesn't mean that you're responsible for the actual test. It just means that you were in that particular location while testing was going on. All right, the chain of custody form. This form is only for paper-based assessments. It's always in the manual, but it's only for paper-based assessments. If you are doing any paper-based accommodation materials, let's say you're at a high school or a middle school, or even elementary school. For example, let's say it's FSA math for 5th grade. It's a Braille book. The minute you get those materials on your campus, this document has to be filled out. Same thing if you're at a middle school or a high school. If you're getting 3rd grade reading materials, those are also paper-based. This document needs to be filled out. The purpose of this document basically is letting us and the state know, yes, I got my materials, I verified my counts. These are the people who have access to them. They were on campus for this amount of time. And the last part you have to do with this form is when you're sending your materials, when they get picked up, you have to document the date that the materials were picked up and left your site. All right? So let's make sure that you always have this filled out when you're having paper-based tests at your school. The next one is the seating chart. This is probably one of my pet peeves, if possible. A lot of our teachers like to be artistic. They want to sketch. Well, some of them are really not very artistic, but that's another story. But they want to sketch out their seating charts for your room. For most testing, you want to have your teachers rearrange their rooms into rows anyways, and you can have generic seating charts. In fact, we have a generic one on our IMS page that you guys can use and edit for your uses. However, if you're using a lab, most of your labs, we're not going to be rearranging labs very often. So if you want, you can create them in advance. If you have Publisher on your computer, this is often the one I use. I have some that I've used in the past that I can send to you if you contact me, and then you can edit it to look like the lab at your site if you would like. There is some specific information that has to be on each seating chart that a lot of schools seem to leave out. For example, the test administrator, the date that testing was going on, which test was being administered, has to be on that seating chart. So you want to make sure that that is provided. Additionally, if a test administrator is moving a kid in the room from one seat to another, it needs to be updated on the seating chart. So make sure you remind your test administrators and proctors of that. If a student is in one room and then is going to another room for testing, you want to make sure that that's documented on the seating chart. That way, if it's scanned and we're needing to find where a kid was, a lot of times you don't remember things after the fact if I have to call you about it. But if it's on the seating chart, we'll know that Johnny was in room 310, and then after lunch, we moved him to 408. All right, the next document. A lot of times, because it has so much text on it, people tend to just sign it and hand it back without paying much attention to it. This is the Test Administrator Prohibited Activities Agreement. I encourage all of you to read through it. Whenever you do a training, make sure your test administrators are reading through it before they sign. This basically highlights all the activities you and test administrators and anybody else involved in testing should not be doing while testing is going on. It has, excuse me, it has what's going on for before testing, during testing, and after testing, things that you cannot do. Now, we do have a system in our district, especially because you guys scan and upload them, that once your teachers fill them out one time for the year and you've uploaded it, then they don't need to fill out any more for the rest of the school year. Excuse me. So once you have them fill it out one time, so for example, if you're at a middle school or a high school and you're getting ready to do, let's see what's coming up, EOCs in a couple weeks, once they fill this out that one time, you keep it on file. Of course, you upload it to the TDM upload site. And then when you're doing, if they're doing testing in the spring, then they don't need to fill out another one because you already have it on hand. All right, so just keep that in mind. Same thing if you're at an elementary school and they're doing flickers or any of those other tests that's coming up shortly, the same thing will happen. Have them fill it out and then keep it on record. The other one, this has to be filled out by both your test administrator and the proctor, is a test administration and security agreement. Basically, you're agreeing to uphold the test security throughout the whole testing phase. And again, this has to be filled out just one time for the school year. Test coordinators, you'll keep it on file as well as upload it. And then that way, once you have it done that one time, then you don't have to have it done again. Now, there are some exceptions. For example, Access for L's has a totally separate and different document that has to be filled out, so they will have to sign that one. But if they're doing any FSA or NGSS testing, once they fill it out that one time is good enough. All right. Another pop quiz. The TDM Security Document Guide was created too, and this one has multiple answers. Eliminate the need for the DACO box, which is the District Assessment Coordinator box. Decrease days at the warehouse. Make retrieving test security documents faster. Or streamline management of test security. What is the answer? All right, A, C, and D. Now, of course, us having this document does not decrease my days at the warehouse. I have to go to the warehouse anyways, whether we did this or not. So B is the only one that does not apply. But yes, it does eliminate the need for the DACO box. It does make finding materials, the documents easier, and it makes streamlining the management of the materials for you at the school sites a lot easier as well. All right, let's talk about the testing platforms. Probably going to be saying a few terms that you've never heard of in your life, but I promise that probably by the end of the month, you will know all of them. Each test that we do, especially the online tests, all have different platforms. A lot of them have different usernames and passwords that you'll need to keep track of. So I want to recommend that you either A, make it simple for yourself when you're using passwords and keep track of them. A lot of times, especially for Cindy and I, there's probably about 20 different sites that I have to have passwords for. I sometimes barely remember my password to the computer, so I have a list of them so that I can access them. So make sure you have some way of keeping track of your passwords. Now, of course, you don't want to tape it up to your monitor so that anybody who walks in has access to that kind of stuff. But if you are going to keep a list unofficially, keep it somewhere where it'd be very difficult in which to find. All right. Here are the list of platforms. We have the College Success Site, if you're doing PERT, which is only at the high schools. We have Pearson Access Next. That is basically K through 12 because we have the end of course exams and statewide science. We have TIDE, which is for our Florida Standards Assessments, FSA. We have Unify for your CFEs and the local created assessments, which are the assessments your teachers might create. And then we have the WIDA site, which is for Access for Ls, which is our ELL test. So the first one is College Success. Again, this is largely for our high schools. For this particular platform, you want to use Google Chrome because it makes your life so much easier. And for some reason, when you use IE, it doesn't load as easily as it should. All right. Now, there isn't much that has to be done on the PERT site outside of pulling your student rosters for their logins and looking at reports. The next one is Pearson Access Next, and this is for our NGSS tests, Next Generation Sunshine State Standards. Again, you want to use Google Chrome when accessing this site. Note that I have included the URL for you, and you, as well as your test administrators, will need access to this site if you're monitoring computer-based testing. On this particular site, we give test coordinators the CBT coordinator role, and CBT means computer-based testing. All right. Pearson Access Next, you'll always or often hear Cindy and I refer to it as PAN. It just makes it easier and sounds cool, in my opinion. You'll use this to create student accounts that were not included in the pre-ID upload file, which, before I go any further, whenever there's any upcoming testing, we always do a pre-ID file for students who fit the criteria for testing. Now, of course, those files have to be created a little bit in advance. So if you're getting new kids in or student records are being updated, they may not be included. So you may have to add some kids in. One thing that I do want to point out is that the state is now requiring the use of the FLE ID. When we do the Part 2 training, we will go into details about how to find that for creating new student accounts. We also use Pearson Access Next to print test tickets, administer the test, view score reports once they come back from the state, and also monitor testing. I personally love Pearson Access Next. Many of the experienced testing coordinators that you'll speak to will say that they hate Pearson Access Next, and that is okay. I will stand on my island alone, but Pearson Access, it can be a little complicated, but if you have any questions about it, feel free to give me a call, and I'll walk you through it. All right? Additionally, just want to point out that we are having an upcoming training about Pearson Access Next. It's my favorite. I'll be doing the training, I don't know why the date's missing, but it's sometime in September. It'll be at 1 p.m. It is on the training calendar, so I'll make sure that you guys have access to that. Yes, ma'am.
This coming Monday.
The one on August 21st is not going to happen?
Oh, then it is. I don't know why September's there. So yes, August 21st. If that's when you say it is, and that's when it's going to be.
Well, that's what
Yeah, no, I'm joking. Yeah, it'll be on Monday. I think Cindy's out, so I'll definitely be doing that one by myself. Now, for testing of the Pearson Access Next tests, which are our NGSS tests, the students use TestNav to actually take the test, and our TSRs are very handy in making sure that they're on the computers, especially if you're at the digital sites. And they are, trust me, I've spoken to them. There is a new TestNav platform that has been recently available, so the TSRs are beginning to get that rolled out in time for the upcoming window. All right. This picture represents how I feel about laundry and Tide. I'm joking. Actually, Tide is pretty cool. I just don't like to do laundry, so I buy new clothes instead. Oops, I skipped too fast. Tide is what we use to access the FSA assessments. This is the link. This link actually takes you to what we call the FSA portal, but Tide is one of the tiles on there, and I'll show you that in just a second. On here, test coordinators are also given the CBT coordinator role, and you want to use Chrome when accessing Tide. All right, so this is what the FSA portal that I was referring to looks like. Some of the tiles are grayed out because when I did the screenshots, they were closed at the moment, but they're now open by the state. You'll notice that one of the grayed out tiles is for Tide, and that is where you'll go in and you'll log in to viewing your student rosters. You'll do your tickets for students as well, just like you do for Pearson Access Next. Now, the difference with Tide versus Pearson Access Next is that for the actual test administration monitoring by your test administrators, that is done on a different site via the portal. That's the test administrator interface. So for the actual test administration monitoring, the test administrators will go to where it says test administration. But if you're needing to generate tickets, add new students, all of that is done in Tide. Another thing I want to point out is that when reports are available, when scores come back, you'll want to use the FSA reporting system. Generally, we give all or most of our testing coordinators access to that because we know that principals are wanting you to pull scores, or you may need to go back and see some historical score data for your students. So we make sure that you have access to that. This is a screenshot of what the actual Tide site looks like once you get situated and logged in. The students test on what's called the test delivery system, which again is a secure browser that's uploaded to the computers by the TSRs automatically, and we are working with them to have that done in time for the next upcoming window. Another thing you may want to do is download the Tide user guide from the portal. It'll tell you how to use the Tide site. We also have a training coming up on August 28th. That one is a real date, I promise. And that will be via Safari Live at 9 a.m. All right, the next one is Unify. This one is a part of Performance Matters. Hopefully all of you have heard of Performance Matters before. There are several other apps for Performance Matters that we'll talk about next week. However, Unify is the one that's used to manage testing for our computer-based district assessments, largely CFEs, and as well as any local created assessments at your schools. Yes, ma'am.
You said the Tide training is August 28th, but that's only for secondary, right? That's what it says.
Right. The reason why that one is just for secondary is because they have a window coming up in September. If you want to attend as an elementary school coordinator, you can, but you won't have any actual testing coming up until the spring.
So we're having hours there.
Right. Right. The next one is the WIDA site. Now, there are two WIDA sites that we use. The first one is basically the training site. It's where you and your test administrators will access training materials for Access for ELS. And then we have what's called the WIDA AMS site. And that one we only give access to test coordinators and the CCTs, which I know they have a new title now that I can't remember. But the people who are your compliance specialists for ELLs, they also gain access to the WIDA AMS site. Largely, that is where you will add new students as well as pull reports for Access for ELS testing. All right. Now we're going to talk about the starting lineup. As Cindy mentioned before, this is a heavy-duty job that requires many hands. You can't do it alone. So let's talk about those people who will need to assist you. All right. Basically, you guys are the coach. As Cindy said before, you're the testing god at the school. You're the supervisor for testing. But when it comes down to actually getting the job done, most of it will fall in your hands, but you'll need to have a team, and you will serve as the coach for that team. You want to make sure that you are always giving specific and clear instructions, because if it's done wrong, then it's usually a big mess to have to clean it up. One of those things that I'm talking about is placing labels on test booklets. It seems like it's a very simple task, but every year we have schools who put labels in places that do not say put label here, but it happens. But you just want to make sure that you always provide clear instructions and that you're willing to coach people if they're doing something incorrectly to make sure that everyone is in compliance. All right. Now, of course, we know that everybody's not always a big fan of testing. You have some people who will do all they can to avoid having to step foot in the testing office. Some people don't want to help sharpen pencils. It's okay. Love them anyhow. You want to make sure that you collaborate with your teachers. A lot of times, some testing coordinators feel, well, I'm in charge of testing, so I just do what I want with testing. But ultimately, testing affects everyone. It affects your teachers, your students, your administration team, the cafeteria. Sometimes if testing goes over, or because of the testing schedule, you may need to push lunch back or start earlier. So you want to make sure that you're collaborating with everyone and keeping everyone on top of the changes that need to be made, right? Also, even though you are the testing coordinator and everyone's going to be coming to you regarding testing, of course, we know that the principal is the person in charge at the school, so you are not above the principal. So make sure that if there are things you want to do, you check in with him or her. I'm pretty sure most of you have great working relationships with your principals anyways. You just want to make sure that you are always keeping them in the know so that they can support you when needed. All right. Cindy and I send out tons of messages. So far this week, you've already gotten 2 messages from us. You're probably getting a lot more as the weeks progress. Just like you'll be doing with your teachers, you want to make sure that you reach out to them. Don't rely just on email. Sometimes you may have to walk down to their classroom if they haven't responded to you in a few days and say, hey, Jackie, I emailed you 2 days ago. I know you're busy with instruction. I know that there's a lot going on. It's the first week of school, but I do want to make sure that you got the information and that you're able to assist or provide a response. Of course, we also know that teachers don't have a lot of time to read emails. Try to keep your messages as concise as possible. You cannot train someone via email, so don't try that. They do need to come see you face to face when doing that. You'd be surprised at some of the things. But anyways, you also need to communicate to your students and parents. So you want to make sure that you get with your principal about doing correct Connect Orange messages if needed. You may need to put information in a parent newsletter. If you're not in charge of the school website, you may want to get with the person in charge of that to post important information about testing there as well. And then, of course, as Cindy mentioned, you have the parent letters that the state gives us. Generally, we try to provide those in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. So you want to make sure that you're using those and sending them out to parents. You can give them out, for kids to take home, because we know that sometimes addresses aren't accurate in SMS. So if you give them to have the students take home, then at least you can say you provided that communication to parents. All right. Now, let's talk about the testing circle of life. One of my favorite movies as a kid was The Lion King. All right, so in testing, we have planning, administering, and then wrapping up. Seems simple, right? You'll probably spend 80% of your time planning for testing, all right? 80% of your time will fall to planning for testing. Administering is kind of I don't want to say the easy part, but it doesn't require much time per se from you. And then wrapping up is probably another 10% as well. Now for administering, of course, you want to make sure that you're always available. If you have testing going on at your school, that's not the day to get married. It's not the day to schedule a doctor's appointment, that kind of thing. In fact, you'll realize that your school is very heavily dependent on you when testing is going on. So make sure that you are available. All right. Planning has a lot of pieces. So that's why I have the picture there of people putting puzzle pieces together. Administering, of course, teachers have to assist you with that. And that comes into the catching flies with honey. A lot of times you're going to have some people who will whine to you about, why do I have to? And, well, Shirley didn't do any testing last time, so why is she not doing it this time, and all that kind of thing. But, you'll work through those bumps in the road. Always butter them up. A lot of times, just simply doing that will have them do things they don't want to do, but they'll do it just because you are nice to them. And then wrapping up, this is another big thing. Largely when it comes to paper-based testing, you want to make sure that the materials you received are shipped out correctly. One year we had a school where the to-be-scored materials were put in the not-to-be-scored box. So then when it was time for scores to come back, they're like, oh, we didn't get any scores back. And of course, I keep all my records. I said, well, I got one box of, as well, it was labeled as not to be scored, and 2 boxes of to be scored. Well, they labeled them incorrectly and swapped them, but luckily we were able to get that resolved. So you want to make sure that you're on top of that. And whenever we do trainings, I will always nag you about making sure things are boxed up correctly. One thing I will say is when I am at the warehouse, if something looks suspect, I'm going to open it. So if I'm at the warehouse and you get a phone call from me, it's probably because I'm talking about your boxes, so don't hide. In fact, luckily, most of you don't know the number I will be calling from anyways. So, but I do know this one coordinator, she's like, oh, he's calling me. What did I do now? And actually, it was to commend her on how well the box was packed. But she didn't want to answer because she thought I was calling because something bad had happened. All right, so we all know that there are lots of testing on the testing calendar. Here represents just one test going on. Sometimes you may have 2 testing going on. You'll see that while one test is being administered, you're also planning for another one. It happens. And this also happens where you'll be having 3 tests going on at the same time. You'll be planning, you'll be administering, you'll be wrapping them up all at the same time together. You want to make sure that you're organized, you keep things straight. You don't want to send your water bill to the light company and so forth like that. All right, planning for testing. Largely, you want to keep track of who needs to test, where do they need to test, which students need to be pulled for testing, are there any accommodations, what materials will I need for testing, will I need a testing bin, or will they need tickets or test booklets, that kind of thing. So that's why we say most of your time will come to planning for testing. Administering testing is pretty simple as far as you are concerned. Your test administrators will be doing much of the heavy lifting, but you need to be available to provide support and to troubleshoot. Especially when testing is going on, you don't want to be the one that's also a test administrator, because if I need to call you for any particular reason, I need to be able to access you. And of course, you can't have a conversation with me or Cindy if you are a test administrator on the day of testing. With that said, we know that things happen, people call out, kids get sick, they have to stay home on the day of testing. Always have backup test administrators and proctors scheduled just in case you need them. Also, if you're at a middle school or a high school, and even sometimes at some of our larger elementary schools, on testing days, you can't be everywhere at one time. So you will need some people, sometimes 2 to 3, depending on the size of your campus and how many kids are testing. You may need up to 20. You want to make sure that you delegate to those people what they're responsible for so that you can provide support as needed for the day of testing. I'll tell you a quick story. At the high school level, for PSAT and SAT school day, basically grades 9 through 12 is testing on one day. If you're at a high school, you probably have 2,700 kids testing at one time. Of course, it's impossible to get to every classroom on campus. So a lot of times I'd have about 20 people that were responsible for checking bins or providing an extra test booklet if it went missing, well, not missing, but if it was torn or destroyed or something like that, or a kid threw up on it. There'd be people who are responsible for making sure kids that were late got into testing. So you want to make sure that you cover all the bases as you're planning so that when testing is going on, you can provide the support and be available as needed. And then also you want to make sure that you're visible. One thing I always feel, I have a lead foot, but of course, whenever I see a cop, I get on the brake and slow myself down. Sometimes people may be tempted to do things they should not be doing, but if they see the police or testing coordinator, they will make sure that they're keeping everything in compliance. If they are doing something incorrectly, at that moment is the time to address it because it can snowball on you later on. So, for example, if you walk into a testing room and you see Malik with his cell phone out, you want to talk to Malik about that cell phone out. Of course, you're not going to go in there and cause a scene, but you'll, whisper to him or discreetly notify him, hey, I need you to be in compliance with testing, and so forth like that. All right. All right, wrapping up testing. Again, we talked about materials being boxed up correctly. If the state says you have 302 test booklets, then you need to send back 302 test booklets, all right? One of the big things in the test security statute is about materials not being returned, so you want to make sure that you're in compliance with that. You'll always receive boxes with your materials. Make sure you keep those so that you can return your test back in them. Whenever you get materials, always verify what you got and what you send back. And then as we mentioned earlier in our training today, you want to make sure that you always scan and upload your security documents by a week after testing is done. All right, so you had a toe dip. I think most of you, hopefully, fingers crossed, will be ready for a cannonball. Just get on in there. We do have several other trainings coming up to kind of get you guys acclimated to testing. We do have the part 2 of this training that will go in deeper. We are doing that one SML so that we can do some examples on the actual computer so you can follow along. And without further ado, if you have any questions, we will take them at this time. All right, we'll start with you. I saw your hand first. For elementary schools,
Repeat the
okay.
question.
Her question is, what tests are paper-based for elementary this year? There's actually a memo coming out, I believe, today about that. But for this year, it's 3rd grade reading. It is science, 5th grade. And then all the Access for L's testing and the CFE testing for your 5th graders is all paper-based.
Writing as well, 4th and 5th
Oh, yeah.
grade.
Forgot about that
And
one.
6th and 7th grade at the middle school is still paper. It's exactly the same as it was last year. So if it was paper last year, it's paper this year. They're no more, no less.
All right. Saw a question back here. Am I imagining things? Yes, go ahead.
2 things. First is a clarification. When you were talking about the test earlier, you used algebra 2. Maybe away with that, correct?
Yes, there is no algebra 2.
All right. And my question is, the PSAT, SAT, we do not charge for PSAT anymore for juniors?
That is correct.
Okay. Does that include the homeschool kids that come take the test?
For homeschool kids, if they are registered with the district, they test for free. If it's a kid that's Florida virtual school, which is something totally different, we do charge them for the test. But if you have a question like that, I can let you know the process for getting that taken care of. Yes, ma'am.
Security purposes. There are many people that have access to my office, but I have a storage room in my office that only I and 2 other people do have keys to. Is that okay, or does my office also need to be?
The storage room would have you in compliance if you're keeping your test materials always in the storage room, yes. But if you're going to be leaving them out in the room, then of course only 3 people would need to have access to that. But if you have a storage room or I know a lot of you guys have the tall metal cabinets. If only you and 2 other people have keyed access to that, then that would work as well.
Repeat the questions because otherwise the video won't pick it up, I don't think.
Oh, okay. She wanted me to repeat that question, but you were asking about whether or not your storage room will be in compliance if only you and 2 other people have access to it, and that would be correct, yes. Right? Yes, ma'am. Okay, good question. All right, so what she's asking is about PERT, which is a test given at the high school. She asked several questions, so I'm going to try to make sure I got all of them covered, and that's okay. The first question is PERT mandatory. If a kid comes in from out of state or from private school and they haven't yet taken the Algebra 1 EOC, do they have to take PERT first, or should they be taking the Algebra 1 EOC first? With that, the student can take PERT first. Normally, our PERT windows fall before the Algebra 1 window, and we do that so that if the kid has the concordance score on PERT, then they don't need to take the Algebra 1 test. Now, of course, PERT, which we will cover in our PERT training coming up in about 2 weeks on the 28th, for that particular test, what we do is kids that are in 10th, 11th, and 12th graders can take PERT. We don't allow 9th graders to take PERT unless they're taking it for dual enrollment. All right? Your other question was, and I think actually I may have answered all of them. Am I missing one?
So they don't have to take an algebra before they
Right. Now, generally, that's why we wait till 10th and 11th grade, but if they're new coming in, if they've failed the Algebra 1 EOC, they're a 10th grader, 11th or 12th grader, we allow them to take it, yeah. Yes, sir.
Since you mentioned PERTs, how do we gain access to college measured success?
Great question. You'll be getting an email on Monday that has your login credentials, as well as some things to get working on in advance of our training coming up.
Okay, just a note on that. We are still dinging some of the principals. There was a survey sent out several weeks ago that they must fill out to appoint who their test coordinators are. Where are we in that process?
All right, so our elementary schools, you guys are letting me down. I have about 20 elementary schools that I still haven't heard from. So if you didn't get an email directly, the first 2 emails we sent this year, if you didn't get a direct email, then that means that you are not included by your principal. But of course, we've included the principals, so many of them had forwarded the emails to you. Our high schools, because the high school principals love me so much, I called most of them yesterday. I still need to call, and he's not here, so I will tell him Winter Park I need to call because I haven't got what I needed. But high schools are pretty much done, so you guys are good to go. Middle schools, you guys are better than the elementary schools. I have actually 6 middle schools that I still need to hear from.
So just be sure that your principal has called. If there's a question, you can go ahead and shoot us an email and we'll double check. But the principal has to fill out that document. They cannot just email us and say so-and-so is our person. Because it is so complicated, we're collecting a lot of information and it automatically sets up our communication list. Again, that communication is critical. If there's changes in that, you need to let us know so that we can make sure that the principal fills out what they need to. So, do make sure that you get that done. If you're not sure, give us a call. If you got the email about this, you're on the list. If you got it directly, you're on the list, so you don't have to worry about it.
Saw a question over here.
So we have freshmen that failed Algebra 1 in 8th grade. And they failed it 8th grade, now they're freshmen. They can't take the upcoming PERT?
No, they would only take the Algebra 1 EOC. Yeah. Same thing with the 8th graders that took it in 7th, your current 8th graders that took it in 7th grade that didn't pass, they're only eligible to take the EOC, not the PERT. All right. Saw a question here. That also is going to be in the newsletter memo that Cindy is sending, but the answer to that is no. There haven't been any changes as yet. We will proceed on as things have been before. Yes, ma'am.
How do you get access to our
Access to iReady is done automatically, and we're going to be talking about that in today's training. We have a system where iReady automatically uploads test coordinators, teachers, and students. So there's no uploading that we'll be doing for that. And you'll access it through the Launchpad. All right. Saw a question in the middle. Yep, go ahead.
As far as access to Unify and DPW, how do I make sure I get
Unify is usually automatic. If you're a testing coordinator, normally you get school-wide access. But what you can do is have your principal or API contact Performance Matters. Their extension is 23487, and they can assist with you getting access. As far as EDW, that's not one of the platforms that we manage, but I believe that to get access to EDW is the same way you get access to SMS. There's a form that's filled out by the API or principal and submitted, and then access is granted. All right. So I'll hand over here. No, change your mind? Oh, go ahead.
The eligible students who are new to OCPS, can they take the algebra one and
Okay. So her question was, students who are new to Orange County or new to Florida, they have not yet taken the Algebra 1 EOC, but they have the credit. Can they go ahead and take it during this upcoming window? The answer to that is yes. They can test in this upcoming window. In fact, we encourage it. Yes.
Is the speakers, does that mean they're training on Canvas?
It's not going to be on Canvas. That one's going to be Safari Live. That's going to be on the 24th, and I'll be sending the link for that tomorrow.
Barrington, this one over here.
Yes, ma'am.
Will there be testing videos, like for basic testing, like the last year procedures and
When you say testing,
quizzes and different things for the teachers?
generally the question she's asking is, are there going to be videos and trainings directly for the teachers? Tide does offer what's called the TA certification. There have been some changes to Tide, so anybody who was previously certified can go back in and redo that certification. When we do our trainings, most times we do include a test coordinator training document that you guys can use to train your test administrators. Because ultimately, it's the test coordinators that provide training to the teachers at their sites for testing.
I just thought I remembered last year that there was something specific for teachers and they did some sort of a video and the questions.
Oh, you're talking about the test security course? Yes, and that is available on our IMS page, the link for that, as well as in Canvas. And everyone does have to participate in that prior to administering a test. Yes. All right.
You said IMS and Canvas, right?
Yes. So she's asking, do we have the PowerPoints to show to the teachers? Yes. So when we post the trainings that we do, so for example, we're doing iReady. Well, iReady is kind of a little bit different in that training is done separately at the school. But let's say it was for PERT, for example. After we do the PERT training for the test coordinators, then we also post what they can use for the test administrators. All right.
How many of you all feel really overwhelmed now? Do you feel better than when you walked in? Okay. We hope this was helpful. Just know that you're not at this alone. All the years I did it by myself, I was helped out by my best friends, Jim and Jack. That was Jim Beam and Jack Daniels. They really helped me out a lot. And now that I have Bear, I've added Johnny Walker to my list of favorite friends. But honestly, you're not alone. We are really here to help. We truly mean that. If you're working on it, we're working on it. You know, don't ever hesitate to give us a call. again, make sure you get that group of people at your school to help you out with this. So go set up your office, your little hive there, make sure that it's comfortable for you, because you'll be spending lots of time there. And we hope to see you in the next couple of days for the trainings coming up that are specific. Have a great afternoon.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
As you guys are leaving, the component
Oh,
number is up on the screen. It is 4 points. Make sure that you hand your form to Jeanette, who's in the back, as you're walking out. All right.
Here, I'll take it. Yeah.